There are cases where the displacement itself tells us very little. This is one of them. What happened after is the entire record.
Welcome to Displaced. I'm your host, Mara Saleh, and that, of course, is Dr. Henrik Voss, the man leading these incredible and often unsettling temporal experiments. Henrik, today's file is number 19, The Weight She Carried Home. A Malian griot from 1500, displaced for 8 minutes into her own tradition and the 40 years that followed.
This episode has a different structure. We won't be showing the displacement.
Why not?
Because what she saw in those 8 minutes is not what this case is about. What this case is about is what she did with the rest of her life after she saw it. Her name is Amara, 44 years old, a griot in Timbuktu, keeper of oral history and genealogy for her lineage. She holds the names, the chain of who came from whom, the histories never written down. If she dies before passing them on, that thread ends.
That is the specific vulnerability of oral tradition.
That is the specific vulnerability. A manuscript can survive if a copy exists. A griot's knowledge survives only if a living person carries it forward. Break the chain and it does not go into a library. It simply ceases to exist.
Where was she displaced?
Present-day Mali. A griot ceremony near Timbuktu, a naming ceremony, the same work she herself had been conducting when she was taken. 8 minutes. She arrived at the edge of the gathering and she listened.
She could understand it.
She could hear it. The language close enough to recognize, the ceremony structure familiar, the instrumental accompaniment exactly as she knew it. She stood at the edge of a gathering of her own tradition, 500 years forward, and she listened.
And?
And something was missing.
What was missing?
Her lineage. The tradition had survived. It was being practiced, being passed. But the specific thread her family had carried for generations was not in it. The names she held were not being spoken. That particular thread had dropped out of the record somewhere in the 500 years between her and that ceremony.
She would have been the only person there who knew anything was missing.
Everyone else present was hearing a complete ceremony. She was hearing a ceremony with a gap in it that only she could locate. Not a catastrophe, not destruction. A gap. Quiet, invisible to everyone around her, and absolute.
That is a very specific kind of grief.
It is not grief exactly. My reading of it is that what she experienced was closer to clarity. She had always known the chain could break. But knowing it in the abstract and hearing the gap with your own ears are different things entirely.
She heard the proof.
She heard exactly what it sounds like when a thread drops out of the record. And then the equipment ran, and she was back in Timbuktu, in the middle of the naming ceremony she had been conducting, and she finished it. And then she began.
What did she begin?
She spent the following 40 years going village by village, elder by elder, through every family in her lineage's territory, collecting every name anyone could remember. She cross-referenced them, found the connections, built a record so complete that no single death could break it.
She was backing up the chain.
She was building a net where there had only been a thread. If one carrier died before passing it on, there would be others who held parts of it. She trained 7 apprentices where the custom was 2. She would not tell them why.
Her colleagues noticed the urgency.
They found her pace alarming. Her apprentices described her as someone who taught as if there was a reason to hurry. She never explained the reason. She simply worked. 40 years of it, faster and more systematically than anyone in her tradition had worked before her.
Did it work? Did the thread survive?
The lineage thread she heard missing, yes. It is in the record today because she went back and filled it before anyone else knew it existed.
No one else knew the gap was there.
No one else could have known. She was the only person who had heard both versions. The ceremony in her time, complete, and the ceremony 500 years later, with one thread missing. She worked from that comparison every day for 40 years.
That is an extraordinary thing to carry.
It is. She already had the capacity. A griot's training is precisely about holding what cannot be written. What the displacement gave her was a specific thing to hold, the sound of the gap.
And no one knew why she was doing it.
They knew she was working. They knew she was thorough. They knew she would not stop. The reason, that was hers alone.
You showed her the gap.
The displacement showed her the gap. I chose the coordinates.
Why there? Why her own tradition?
Because she could perceive it. A subject displaced into an alien environment sees chaos. A subject displaced into the almost familiar sees specifically what is different. She had the expertise to hear what was missing.
You used her expertise to show her something that would cost her the rest of her life.
I used her expertise to show her something true. Whether that constitutes using it against her, I find I cannot settle that.
She spent 40 years living with what you showed her in 8 minutes.
She spent 40 years doing something with what I showed her. That is a distinction I try to hold. I am not certain I always succeed in holding it.
The thread survived because you displaced her.
The thread survived because she chose to spend 40 years filling the gap. I created the conditions for that choice. I did not make it. That is the most accurate version of my responsibility I have found. I am aware of how convenient it is.
At least you know that.
It's the minimum I owe her.
8 minutes? 40 years? That ratio troubles me.
It troubles me too. 8 minutes that she could not explain to anyone. 40 years working from something she could never describe. I have thought about what that costs a person, to spend your life acting on knowledge you cannot share the source of.
Did anyone ever ask her why the urgency?
Her colleagues did. Her apprentices did. She deflected consistently. The record has no account of her ever explaining it. She simply said there was a reason to hurry and went back to work.
She carried it alone.
For 40 years, yes. She heard a gap that no one else in that gathering could hear. Not because the ceremony was broken, because she was the only person present who knew what a complete version sounded like. She went back and spent 40 years making sure that gap would not be in the record she left behind. She never told anyone what she had heard. She just worked. The lineage thread is in the record today because of 8 minutes she could never explain to anyone. I have not decided whether that justifies what I did. I have decided it is worth sitting with for the rest of my career.